Thank you, Apo. Good day, everyone. I'm quite certain that after you see my slides, you'll be wondering whether Alan copied mine or I copied Alan's. But I can assure you that neither of us had the opportunity to talk. We've never met. It was the first time I'm meeting Alan. And I can also assure you that Apo did not tell me what Alan's talking about. So the reason why I'm highlighting this is that when you go through the slides that I'm going to present, don't fall asleep. I know it's between you and lunch, but also look at it from a lens that allows you to reflect. Because that reflection is going to start from the moment I click the next button. Raise your hands, those of you who see a rabbit or a hare. Rabbit? Anyone? Raise your hands. Quickly, it's fine. I'm not going to judge you. That's fine. How many of you see something else? A duck. How many of you see a duck? So clearly, I said I'm not going to judge you, but more people are seeing a duck than a rabbit. All right? But now the people who saw a rabbit are seeing a duck, and those who saw a duck are seeing a rabbit. All right? And I'm not trying to confuse you. How many of you see an old lady? How many of you see a young woman? Again, not judging you, but you will realize that all of you are trying to read each other's minds on who read what. Reflections like this will also tell you another side of the story. And I'm not going to go into the investigation. My past experience has all been all of that. I'm not going to go into that. When you look at these images or when you look at these incidents, the first thing that comes to your mind is, come on, don't be shy. You all know what we all keep harping about. Human hashtag error. I call it hashtag error because in my dictionary, there's no such thing as an error. And I'll tell you why. And that's exactly what I started my opening slide was. When something bad happens, we have a tendency to start with the top circle. We say, people are the problem. And then we go down to the next route. People are the problem. Let's focus on their behaviors. What do you do for behaviors? Train them, ask them to follow procedures, give them more training, more procedures, more training, more procedures. It doesn't end. Either you reward or you punish. You take people who had an accident, send them back home, they go on another ship, and the cycle continues. Whether it's yours or another one doesn't matter. That builds in a fear or an extrinsic motivation for people to behave. And what does that do? It inhibits the learning and speaking up, which Alan was talking about. So where does that lead us? People are the problem. And that's exactly what psychological safety is all about. It's not something new. It has been around for a long time. The fact is we have not, as an industry, recognized it. You might ask, why haven't we not recognized it? Apo talked about aviation being compared to maritime. Yes, it's a fact. You ask an airline pilot at 33,000 feet when he's preparing for landing, and the office or the Singapore Airlines operations desks call them, the captain, can you please send me the manifest of how many people you have on board? Do you think that's going to ever happen? Never. Because the psychological safety in that cockpit, that sanitized flight deck, is so driven that there's no way that the pilot is going to yield to those commands and he's going to respond when the time is right, when it is relevant, because that is a maneuver he's going to make for landing. That's a critical approach. But maritime does not allow that. Maritime allows, well, we go through the motion and things move on. So the belief, I'm not going to go into that. Amy Edmondson talked about that. It's a belief that no one will be punished for making mistakes or speaking up. So why is that relevant? Again, Alan talked about organizations where there's a high level of psychological safety. There is a direct correlation of having a safe and sanitized environment. Why is that important? Because if you don't have that environment, there is a possibility things are happening on a day-to-day basis. You might notice on the top left-hand corner, what is WAI versus WAD? What's happening when nothing bad is happening? Work as imagined versus work as done. It is not about just the deviation. It is about understanding what makes things work at 99% of the time, that the same people did it perfectly all right. They must be doing something different, or maybe not. And that's where the blue-black line analogy comes in. So the black line is your procedures. You can keep harping about 20,000 procedures in your safety management system manuals you have. I would say, this is what we must do. But the blue line is where the work happens on a day-to-day basis. Workers are performing work, that very work, which is defined as per your procedures, is actually not according to the black line. You might think it is the black line, but it's actually performing along the blue line. You imagine you've got one worker, one variable, one blue line, a ship of 25 people, 25 blue lines. You've got a fleet of 10 ships, 250 blue lines for the same black line procedure in your safety management system, because workers are masters of the blue line. So understand this, which is called an organizational drift. We must shift our thinking from the traditional approach of just going by metrics, KPIs, targets, LTIFs, to understand what is actually happening on a day-to-day basis on the ground by our own people, the same people who are running the ships, like Akshat said in the morning, taking ship from A to B, what's happening that's going on well for them. And to do that, you must understand to be able to create trust. Again, I'm not going to go into every line item because I'm mindful of time. Empowering workers to participate in that management, recognizing that they possess the valuable insights. It's not about trying to say that follow this procedure, you should have followed procedure, and let's go back and train you for following the procedure. We're fooling ourselves. To foster a culture of trust, collaboration, continuous learning, because that's an ongoing process. It's not when accident happens. It actually happens in peacetime. So from the earlier circle, where we thought people are the problem, you could have a possibility of people are the solution. So what does that do? That is because you start focusing on relations and inquiry. You start talking to people. You get down to the level. You don't have a parent-child relationship. You have an adult-adult relationship. You increase the trust and the learning between the people. You create a higher psychological safety within the organization, within whatever ecosystem you want to develop, and you develop an intrinsic safety culture where people are the solution. So instead of spiraling downwards on the loop on the left-hand side, you actually create a system which is so resilient, it doesn't spiral. It is actually improving as it goes along. And I'll end the slides by leaving this food for thought. The human organization performance principles, or the 5 HOP principles, are so relevant. And don't read them in any particular order. It doesn't matter where your eyes travel to, whether it's the first one or the third one or the fourth one, it is immaterial. What matters is all 5 are extremely relevant. My personal favorite, if you ask me, don't judge me for that, context drives behavior. And if you understand that particular one, it's not the first one. If you understand that one, you'll start realizing that nothing happens without reason. If the blue line, if people are doing that blue line, there is a reason for it. The shortcut path that Dean talked about, there is a reason that you go to any country in the world, you go through a park, you will find that shorter path through the grassway, even though the council has made that walkway. There is a reason for it. So think about it. Context will always drive behavior. Thank you, Apple.